But I think it was recognising and being comfortable in my own skin, but also that word that we've mentioned a few times now, this authenticity. I think it's important to be authentic in your life and be who you are, but to also take that next step to realise that it's okay for someone else to also be authentic and take an interest in that.
Hi. Yo. Nope. That was a really weird hi.
No, keep going. It's genuine.
Hi. Hi. You're listening to Sam and Am Solve the World's Problems.
Big problems, casual conversations.
We have a lot of problems.
Yeah.
But today we're going to be talking to a dear friend and mentor of ours. He's a president of 70 with Community of Christ.
Yeah, he's one of the most authentic people we know. He's so great at building connections with people, which is great for the problems we're talking about today.
Yeah, and we also pick his brain about what it's like to travel all the time for work and not for enjoyment.
Please welcome to the podcast, Adam Wade.
Woo!
Hey, Ads, welcome to the podcast. So glad you could be here.
Thanks, Sam.
Yeah, we're really excited to chat to you. I don't know how to explain how we know you. It's kind of one of those church relationship, but I literally have no idea when we met. But
I think you guys were pretty tiny when I first met you.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Like I've got this image of you as like little toddler kids running around, but
yeah.
I think you guys have always been small anyway, so that just might be what's burned into my brain.
Yeah,
but we are short people.
Over the years, my experience knowing you has always been definitely more overseas than in our own country. I always have spent more time with you, whether it's in the United States or Canada, even
or Tahiti.
Yeah. My cousin even ran into you on a layover in Texas one time.
Oh, that's right. Yeah.
Completely unplanned.
Where do you actually technically live?
So technically at the moment I live in Melbourne,
yeah.
But I have lived in Sydney and I've also lived in Seoul, South Korea.
Nice.
Yeah, you were there for about 4 years.
Yeah, 4.5 years in Seoul. It was awesome. Loved it.
And what do you do for a job that means that you travel so much?
So I work for the church, the Community of Christ, and my role is a little unusual to explain if you don't really know much about the church, but my official title is President of 70. But I look at how, as a church, we can be looking outside of our own doors and reaching out into the community and helping to share the message and to help other people on their journey, whether that's offering aid or offering spiritual aid, all comes into play. So that's part of my role. And as a president of 70, I look after all of the ministers that are termed 70 after a scripture in Luke chapter 10. And so that means that I'm responsible for all the 70 in the Pacific Asia field. So that includes Australia, New Zealand, Fiji, New Caledonia, Hawaii, Japan, South Korea, Taiwan.
Yeah.
And yeah, so it's really weird when I start telling people what I do. They always go, oh, it must be so exotic. You're just jet-setting around the world. And, you know, when I start to mention some of those places, yeah, it sounds like I spend all my days traveling to these exotic places and laying on the beach. Which,
so are you saying that's not the truth?
No, I mean, sometimes it's fascinating. I like traveling for work is definitely different than traveling for pleasure. And, you know, I think about the times where, you know, you've just got this tiny little space, which is literally as wide as your shoulders, that is your space for the next up to 17 hours, and you're sitting next to usually a complete stranger that, you know, I especially love the ones that like to jiggle their leg while they're reading.
So you've sat next to me then.
Yeah, oh, that's awesome on a 17-hour flight. But, you know, then there's the waiting at airports and the travelling to and from airports and getting on buses and getting in taxis and hoping that they're not going to take you somewhere and try and kill you, but actually take you to the place you want and then not overcharge you in some of the places that I go. So
does going to the airports, like, it sounds like it gets old, but I feel like it would never like properly get old. Like going and getting on planes and stuff all the time. I don't know. It's kind of luxurious, right? Like I know you're like stuck in like place. I don't know. I just feel like I would never fully get over it. It's kind of like for me, like going over the Harbour Bridge. I never fully get over it.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's funny. Like I remember the first time I travelled when I was 15, and how nervous I was going through security and making sure I had everything and getting everything out of your pockets and taking your belt off and doing the shoes off and everything. And then going through to the customs officer with your passport kind of shaking in your hand, and them asking you the questions about where you're going and constantly checking where all your stuff is. I had a moment last year where I sat down on a plane and it clicked that I hadn't been concentrating since I'd left home. It was so automatic.
Yeah.
It was the most bizarre experience where I just went through the motions and just did what I normally do. And it wasn't until I sat down that I went, oh, hold on a sec, I'm leaving the country. It was this really weird feeling. So there is a routine, and I guess I do have somewhat of a routine when I travel. So that makes traveling with my family interesting. As my wife walks through the airport, let's go look at this. I'm like, no, we need to get to the gate. We need to do this, and then we do this. And so that's interesting. But sleeping on an airport carpet where there's a blizzard pouring outside because you don't have enough time to make it to the hotel and come back again before your flight. So trying to get those 5 or 6 hours sleep after you've been already flying for about 24 hours, it's really not as exotic as it sounds.
Yeah.
So, but I get to go to these wonderful places, and I found once I started in this role where I was traveling to a lot more countries, everyone was saying, oh, your job sounds so amazing, it must be so wonderful. And I thought, well, if everyone thinks I'm having a good time, then I probably should start doing things that I enjoy. And so as a result, I went and got my diving license. So I've been scuba diving in most of the places I go, and have just fell in love with scuba diving with sharks. There's just something about being in the water with those animals that's just phenomenal. And it's funny, as soon as the sharks turn up, I'm my most calm. I completely relax and just have them around, and it's just awesome.
Is it part of that, like, you are so like resigned to your fate at that point where like
I can't even fathom being calm in that situation.
Well, it's just like, well, what are you going to do? Like,
I'm either going to die or I'm going to live, and they're my two choices, and I have nothing. There's no choice about it, kind of thing. Is that what it is?
No, I mean, it's something that I thought. So I grew up surfing, and I always had sort of that unsettling feeling every now and then when you're out by yourself sitting on a surfboard early in the morning. You just kind of make sure that you're looking around a little bit. But once I started diving and you're actually in their environment and they realize you're not a threat, there's no fear. Like, I've never once been scared. And the last dive I did, we had a couple of lemon sharks that are about 3 meters long. And in the dive, we probably saw about 50 sharks. There were 5 different species. And I'm not talking about you see them in the distance. They're like a couple of feet away from me as they just sort of come up and check you out and keep going past.
So they're just not interested
awesome.
In a snack?
No, I mean, they don't see you as a snack anyway. Most sharks, when they do bite, they've confused you as another animal that they think's wounded or a seal. And as soon as they bite you, they usually go, oh, that's nasty. What the heck was that? And
wetsuit.
Yeah. So, but there is more, there's more and more attacks occurring, particularly around Australia. And I think a lot of that has to do with the overfishing and commercialisation that's causing them to come closer and closer and get hungrier and hungrier. Or just if all of a sudden you're hungry and there's something else in the water that could potentially threaten your survival or your food source, you probably want to chase it out of that area because it's already a battle as it is to be able to survive. So I think some of those things that we're seeing are the reactions to how we're operating as a society.
Yeah, that is not how I thought this intro was going to go, but like I want to ask so many more things.
Can I ask one more thing? Because you did say 70 and you mentioned the scripture or something. I just was interested to know what that was.
Okay. So Luke 10, there's a scripture where Jesus was walking around and Jesus sent out 70 followers to go out into the other areas and to share the message. And so that's where we get the term 70 from, is from those 70 people that went out, that weren't just focused inwardly but were focused outwardly.
Oh, cool. There you go.
All right, so problem 1 is all about how you travel for work. It's kind of the umbrella of like, how do you stay sane when you travel for work? And my first question, I kind of want to ask, you touched on it a little bit before, like, is there one thing that you always do in another country just to like be like, yeah, I went there and I did my thing? I don't know if you like what, if scuba diving is that thing, or if there's like, I always get a coffee because that, like, I want to try the coffee from every place. I don't know.
I'd say no. There's not a specific thing that I go to do. Although, in saying that, I then look up to the wall in front of me and I try and get a mask from every place I visit.
Like a COVID one? Like a recent tradition? Or?
No, not that kind of mask. No, like a wooden carved mask.
Oh, you're ahead of your time.
Yes, that's right. No, part of it is, and I have them up on my wall so that when I'm working from home in my study, I can look up and it reminds me of the faces of the people I know in each of those places. And so I can then think about those people and whether or not, you know, sometimes people will come to mind, and so I'll reach out and shoot them an email or a text and just see how they're doing. But it's to help me to try and stay a little bit more connected with some of those places that I've travelled to and remember some of the experiences that I've had. So sometimes finding that is a little adventure in itself. So trying to carve out enough time one afternoon or one evening to suss out a local market or a shopping area, typically for tourists, where you can explore and then try and barter your way through purchasing a mask, and then the fun task of trying to fit it in your suitcase to come home. But most of the time I do like to try and go out. I think the best way to learn about any new place is to actually just get out and walk around. It's fascinating. Before I lived in Korea, I don't know that I would have felt this way, but when we first got there, there were certain things that I wanted to try and do and try and set up for the apartment where we were living. So whether it was tools or even like picture hooks and random stuff like that, where normally I'd jump in the car, head down to Bunnings 5 minutes down the road, be able to buy it, turn around, come back, and that afternoon it'd be done. Well, that's not how things operate in Korea. And so there'd be times on an afternoon or an evening where I'd be catching a bus and then a train and another bus and walking alleys and trying to find these random shops that some foreigner had posted online to say, oh, I found such and such at this place. And so I actually found it was really easy to get lost. But the more I did it, the more I felt comfortable being lost. And I didn't have that sense of panic or concern about, I'm not sure where I am or how I get back. You just sort of learn that, okay, it's okay. I just have to figure this out, and I'll retrace my steps or I'll change direction. And sometimes you discovered something completely amazing that you wouldn't have otherwise found. And I think being comfortable with being lost is one of those things that I took from my experience over there. That probably helps with some of these other places. I'm happy to walk around and explore and see how the local people live and sometimes interact depending on language and culture and things like that. But I think there's always a benefit to exploring.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah.
When I think back to any experiences that I don't want to say cherish, but I will anyway, from when I've traveled, is that it usually starts with something going wrong. And then, yeah, everything else ensues, and then you find these other places. So I can relate to that for sure.
Yeah. I can relate because that happened. Like, I feel like that's the typical thing that happens is that, you know, something goes wrong and then everyone gets a good story out of it. But like, as someone who hates being lost and gets very stressed, do you have like, I don't know, I mean, what was it like traveling before you sort of came to feel comfortable being lost? Like, is there something that like helped? Or I'm just thinking like when I did my trip that you helped me plan, that it was all around America, like I had to learn all these ways of, okay, I'm super stressed here. What can I do to like be more calm, or what can I do for myself right now? Like, is there anything that stands out for you that helped you sort of stay grounded in that moment and not freak out, or even just push yourself to do things? I feel like I've asked a lot of things in one sentence.
Yeah. Well, the thing that comes to mind, and I found it fascinating, is food is massive. I never really contemplated how big a deal food was. So when I'm here and it's like, oh, it's lunchtime, I know I can get something to eat that I will like in about 3 or 4 minutes from my house. But when you're in a foreign place, all of a sudden, I think there's a lot more anxiety about finding food because the shops could be different. You're not sure if you're going to even like it. And so then what do you do because you're hungry? So then do you just walk into some random convenience store and just snack on corn chips? There's actually a lot more focus I think, spent on food. And I found in the first couple of weeks of being in Korea, there was times where I was like, I just want to go to McDonald's because I know what the food's going to taste like when I go in there.
Yeah.
It was bizarre. And I think back to it, but it was about once a week where I'd just be like, yeah, I think I just need to go and do this. And as I got used to the food and started liking different types of Korean food and then figured those things out, I definitely was then not going to Macca's every week. But yeah, there's something about food that's quite comforting, I think, at times when you know it's going to taste how you expect it to taste and that you're going to be okay and it's going to sustain your hunger.
Like the most adventurous person in the world, even if you love tasting new things, there's going to be a point where you're just like, I just want to know what I'm going to eat. Like I love trying new things, but I need to know what this is going to taste like, and I just need some sort of regularity and routine and comfort, and I just need to know what this is, kind of.
And I need to know that my stomach's not going to react about 3 hours later. That would be really good too.
Yeah.
So, but I think there's other things I think that you can sort of have as part of your travel kit, for want of a better term, that I found were really just sort of helpful and helped relieve some of those stress in those situations. And one of them, as stupid as it sounds, is to have a roll of duct tape in your bag. The amount of times where that saved me, that and a pair of like nail file clippers with a little pocket knife on it. Because there's just random times where...
You can also want some WD-40.
You can't take an aerosol on the plane, Sam. Yeah.
If you don't have a power drill with you when you go into Tahiti, I don't know what to tell you, but you're not going to survive.
But stuff like, if your bag splits open, in the worst case, you can just duct tape it up to get you to the next spot.
I had to buy a new bag.
It doesn't take up a lot of space, and it's one of those things you can just shove it in one of your shoes and it'll be handy.
Well, see, my comfort thing that I brought with me on my trip to make me feel more at ease was like 100 bags of tea, 100 of my favorite teas, and then I drank them all, and I had to get more sent over to me. And I was like, I just can't survive without this tea. I need to know that if everything is going wrong, I have this specific cup of tea that I can have. And then I remember everything was going wrong for me in Hawaii, and I couldn't find a kettle, and I just put it in some cold water, and I was like, this is what I got to do right now.
And the other thing is, I always try and find decent coffee, which can be a challenge in some parts, but
it's one of my favorite parts about traveling with you is that I then benefit off that decent coffee.
Yeah, correct. Yeah.
Amen to the coffee thing. I'll take instant coffee whenever I go to a different place, just to make sure that, like, even if they have, I don't know, the worst, even if it's slightly different, I at least have that as a backup, and it's just comforting to know that I can at least have that at some point.
Yeah.
If all else fails.
You mentioned to us before, but I don't think we were recording, that because you travel so much, it's like you have a really set routine when you go to the airport and you kind of go on autopilot mode. What is it like then traveling with your family?
Yes. Look, I one of the things that has been really fascinating about traveling on my own and then with my family. So I have got to, in places where I've got to travel, I've got to see some phenomenal things. But it's really bizarre that most of the time as I'm standing there looking at the thing in the country, so it's like standing on the edge of Niagara Falls or the Great Wall of China or in some temple, is I'll often stand there and be in awe of that place and then have the thought, I wish Beck was here with me to enjoy it. And so I think that's probably one of the real difficult things of that. So I have the routine, and that part is frustrating because I have to break said routine when she wants to look in the duty-free shop and then she wants to go and get a coffee and then she wants to go over here. And then one of us has to manage one of our boys because they've just thrown up mid-flight, all of that fun stuff. It's been wonderful to be able to have them join me on some of my trips or to be able to take our trips together. It's definitely one of those things that's a struggle, I think, when you travel on your own. We talked about food, going and sitting in a restaurant to have dinner by yourself is not always great fun, especially when you don't have phone reception in that particular nation. So you're literally sitting there looking around the place. You sort of, I think at times need to be comfortable in your own company. So I do. Yeah. For some people it's pretty tough. So I think those moments that I do get to travel with them, I do really cherish and enjoy when we get that opportunity.
I want to like flip the question on you now and see what it's been like, because now that there's been COVID, you've been stuck at home, right? And in not only at home but in the Melbourne area,
which has been in one of the harshest lockdowns of the world.
Yeah. How has it been like being? Have you been cooped up with your family for that time?
My wife's keyboard is so freaking loud.
I was like, where is this going? I don't understand. Oh, right.
Yeah.
It's like, yep. So we've set up in my study, which is now our study, and we've had to balance some of that with, me taking meetings in other rooms or her taking meetings in other rooms. Mostly it's been really kind of nice, actually. Everyone has really struggled, and there's been times where I've struggled, but for the most part, I've found it's actually kind of nice not having to think about, in a couple of days' time, I need to drive out to the airport and book the parking and get ready to go and pack a bag and make sure clothes are washed and prep this class or this talk. So from that perspective, it's been really good. The interesting thing I've found is because this situation has forced us to operate online, I've actually seen the huge benefit in being in a place face to face. So I think there was probably
going to ask if it might have changed the way you have to work moving forward, whether you don't have to travel as much.
Yeah, it's probably for me justified the travel more.
Yep.
Because things just take such a long time online. Yep. And then when you're working with different cultures and different languages, that seems to be exponentially increased. So I think when we were traveling, there was always discussions around, well, maybe we could do some of this online. Do we need to be traveling as often? These types of questions. Being forced into that situation has now, I think, consolidated the fact that we get so much more done when we're actually able to sit across the table from someone, be able to read body language, be able to pick up on nuance in language, to then be able to work through whatever we need to work through.
Yeah, and like when you've finished a meeting instead of a call, you can just go back and go, oh, but by the way, instead of like you've hung up and you're like, oh, well.
Or you get to have the chats, that this podcast was founded on, that you just get to turn around and be like, oh, let's go get lunch and let's chill and let's talk about the meaning of life and
the times before and after the meetings.
Yeah.
Yeah. So it's been fascinating in that regard.
How have your family dealt with you being at home so much?
Yeah, good question. So, actually, it was amazing to have fishing as one of the first things opened up here, because it meant I could get on the kayak and just go out into the bay, which is not very far from my house, and just be alone.
See ya.
So, no, it's been okay. I must admit, there's been a lot of projects get done around the house. So we redid the front garden, and I've made a kayak paddle, and now working on something called a cycle cart, which if you're interested, you can Google that later.
Not interested, but okay.
Yeah, that's right. And so I've just been doing lots of projects to try and keep myself busy, because that's how I operate. I don't do very well sitting still.
I don't want to talk about travel much longer because it's depressing that we can't do that now.
Yeah.
But yeah.
Yeah. I guess the one thing I probably would add is that, when you can travel, I'd encourage you to, because when you do, you learn so much. You learn so much about yourself. You learn so much about other people and other places.
Wow, what a great podcast. This is Phoebe. You may remember me from episode 15 of Sam and Em Solve the World's Problems. I just want to say, what a great podcast. This conversation is just wonderful. I just could listen to these guys all day. Could you listen to these guys all day? Oh, brilliant. Well, why don't you tell your friends? Why don't you rate, review, subscribe? Does it get any better than this? Why don't you write in? Ask people about your problems. Maybe we could solve them. Anyway, as I say, rate, review, subscribe. Let's go back to the episode.
Our second problem, which is kind of more about the relationships that you build with people. And because you travel so much, you mentioned this before when you were talking about the masks, you meet so many people in different countries. Even like we're in the same country and we barely ever see you except for overseas at different things. Like, you have so many connections with people, and I know that that's something that you really pride yourself on, and it's something you're really good at, is building connections. But then you also are amazing at coming back and following through with that and checking in with people. And like, I have a lot of questions about how you do that, basically. Why is it so important to you?
It's funny you say that because I actually think I'm pretty terrible at that, actually. So
maybe that's where the passion comes from.
Yeah. I don't know. I guess whether I learnt this early on or actually now that I say that, when I was 15, I mentioned earlier, I had my first trip overseas. So I actually went over to the US to a specific event that the church ran. And at that time in my life, when you're sort of that age, you're trying to figure out who you are, who all your friends are, where you fit in the world. My first couple of years at high school were kind of interesting in that I had a friendship group. I thought, I was in, that I'd found a good group of friends until one day they turned around and said, Adam, we don't want you to follow us anymore. We don't like you. We don't want you to hang out with us. And so I ended up then tracking around the school and hanging out with some different people. But yeah, it wasn't long after that experience that I went over to this event. And I remember this particular moment at this event where I actually was walking through this huge crowd of people. There's about 1,000 young people there, all my age. And we just got out of this one session and I was walking through this crowd by myself. And I had this huge realization that I could go up to any single person in that entire space, any of those 1,000 people, and instantly start talking to them, and they would welcome me and want to know more about me and be a friend to me. And so I think that confirmed in me that I was okay being who I was. There was something in that moment where it's like, no, it's okay to be who I am. Funnily enough, I went the next couple of years at high school, the same group that told me to rack off, actually I ended up becoming friends with again. And a couple of them were even groomsmen at my wedding. So it's interesting that once, maturity kicks in.
I was going to say, still playing the long game to get back at them to this day.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, no. So, but I think it was recognizing and being comfortable in my own skin, but also that word that we've mentioned a few times now, this authenticity. I think it's important to be authentic in your life and be who you are, but to also take that next step to realize that it's okay for someone else to also be authentic and take an interest in that and learn about what being authentic means for that other person. I'm much more interested in who someone really is than them just giving me the fancy spiel about all the fancy countries they get to travel to. I'd much rather know, who are the people that you're sitting with and what issues are they dealing with and what's their real daily life like and things like that. So I guess I've always sort of tried to pursue that authenticity. And I don't know if it came out of that experience at high school or that event, but I think it's just been something that I've always yearned for and been able to then try and connect with.
It's definitely like something that sort of radiates off you. Like I feel like it's impossible to talk to you and not be authentic. Maybe that's just me, but like I feel like whenever I see you, things just sort of fall out of me that I needed to say or needed to like ask or hear or something. And like, I'm getting the vibe from you that that's not like intentional, that you don't sort of go up to people seeking their deepest, darkest secrets, but sort of, I don't know, just sort of, you just have that sort of ability to just ask how people are, but they know that you actually mean it. And I don't know if you know how you do that or have any advice. It's always something I want to do more, is ask people and have them actually tell me how they're feeling and going. I don't know how to ask that question and get an actual response.
I feel like it's hard in Australia too, because our greeting is how you going, and it's like it's not a real question.
Yeah.
It's like how do you actually find out?
Yeah.
Yeah. It's like, how you going? Good, thanks. How are you? Yeah, good, thanks. Oh, I've had a terrible week.
No, that is it. Yeah, no, that's it.
Yeah, I don't know. I guess part of it is this desire, and I don't know if this is it, but I have a desire to learn, and I want to learn about people. And I think if you give me superficial information, I'm not going to learn. And it's not to like, I need to figure this person out, but it's more in a sense of, okay, in learning more about this person, how can, I assist them on their journey? How can we partner together? How can, if there is ways that I can assist, how can I best do that? You need to kind of find out where you might fit into that puzzle. So I think I've always, it's probably more this desire to learn. I'm not interested in the casual stuff, but I am more interested in, okay, what's really going on? Because then at that point, yeah, maybe that's where greater change can happen, or where there is that ability to connect on a deeper level, which interests me much more than just having you click the friend request.
I was going to say, it sounds kind of like you just, you are almost indulging your genuine curiosity in other people, as opposed to like, do you ever ask a question of someone else and go, oh shit, maybe I shouldn't ask that? Or
no, usually I'll go, oh crap, I didn't realize this is where this was going to go. It's more a surprise. It's more a surprise.
That they actually respond honestly, and then you go, oh.
Yeah.
No, I mean, it's always interesting and fascinating. And I think there is an element, I guess it's not to indulge my own curiosity, because I don't think it's an egotistical thing, or I want to take on, everyone else's and say, oh, look how many people trust me. I think it's more about figuring that we're all in this together. We've all got to try and work out life, and everyone is presented with such different circumstances. So how the heck can we help each other out? That's really what it comes down to. It's like, if knowing that we can help each other, then that's awesome, because then we can help continue to move forward and make the world a better place. I think that's really what it is.
Okay. And then I have more questions about this, because it just intrigues me, and the vibe that I get from you as well, especially when I'm having a personal conversation with you about something, is that you are very actively listening to what I'm saying, which is weirdly rare. It feels rare. I don't know how rare it is, but is that something that you've learnt and practiced? Because I find it really difficult, and I don't know if it's just my attention span is so short, or whether I'm vapid. But my desire to learn and to know about people is definitely there, and I really want to listen. But sometimes I'll be in a conversation, and then I'll be someone else will be halfway through a sentence, and I go, what the shit, I've totally zoned out here and I don't know what they're talking about. Does that ever happen to you? Am I alone in that?
Happens to me, but I try to not.
I try to not.
No, I know you do, yeah.
Sorry, Sam, what did you say?
Yeah, thank you.
I was like, is the mic not working?
Oh, sorry. I totally, anyway.
Yeah. No, I don't know. I think there's a couple of things that I've found are really, either I've learned them from some book or some article, or just figuring it out over time. But yeah, one of them is particularly, I guess I used to work with youth, and one of the things was that it's actually easy to talk to someone not making eye contact. So there's all this discussion about, you should make eye contact and it connects. But if you can show that you're listening, it actually is less confronting for the person to share some things if you're not staring them in the eyeballs. And that's always been something that's tried to be,
yeah, because you want to show them that you're listening, yeah, right? Yeah.
Yeah. And so, I mean, that's fascinating. I think part of it also, whether it was before that or since then, I find that body language is huge, particularly in those countries where I don't speak the language. And I know a few words here and there, but they say, so much of communication is body language. And I'd agree that you can definitely sense how someone is feeling just by the way that they're carrying their body language. So
I want
that's another thing.
Interrupt, because I have an anecdote to disprove this, and it's your fault as well. I just can't.
Well, that's good.
I'm still mad about it. So when we were in Tahiti, we had this, because there was heaps of different cultures there. There was people from Korea, Tahiti, us. Obviously, I feel like there were more languages involved there, but I can't remember what they all were. And you and whoever else was leading things one night decided we were going to do this. We were going to be put into groups with people from all different cultures, and we were going to do this set of activities. We're going to move around a bunch of different activities, and you didn't need language for any of the activities. Well, that was well and good, except that you decided to play red light, green light, and it was me with minimal French who had to tell all the New Caledonian women how to play, and I literally, I had my colours and I knew the word bottle, and that's all I knew, and I was like, I got to get this across. And so I basically, I found the New Caledonian people, it was harder, the Tahitians picked up my French better than the New Caledonian people did. And so I had to tell it to the Tahitians, and then they told the New Caledonians in perfect French so that they could understand. But you were like, yeah, let's get started on this game. You don't need any words, blah, 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 blah. They needed words. And I had to speak in this minimal French and try to get it across to them. And there was so many actions involved. It was so rough. And it was only after the entire game was over, I think, that they actually finally picked up what was going on. And I'm still mad about it. Because also then I was in a group of like Tahitians, and most of them are, not most of them, but a lot of them are really great translators. And I'm in this group and we moved on to Mareva's activity next. And this guy, she's like, oh, I think his name is Amos. Amos, come and translate for me. And he just stands up there and translates this whole time. And he just kind of looks at me. I'm like, you stitched me up good. He's probably just laughing the whole time.
That's awesome. But at the end of the day, were you able to do it?
Honestly, I'm not sure. I think they just gave up on the game. I don't think they actually ended up playing. I got really into it. I gave up on telling them and I just wanted to win. So I don't know if it ever got across, but it was fun.
Yeah.
I love the stories about your minimal French. I still remember.
Well, okay.
Attention, mon visage.
Oh, yeah. I was staying with a family who had a few young boys. And so I actually learnt French from like years 2 to 10 at school. But we never really learned it properly until year 7. And then I studied it again in uni. But I've never been like fluent. It's only been like really minimal. And so once we went to Tahiti, I hadn't spoken French in about a year. I also have family who live in New Caledonia. But anyway, hadn't spoken French in about a year. And I know minimal things. Like I know lots of really weird words. My vocab is really good, but my grammar is awful, so I can't stitch the sentences together. But basically, these kids, we were in the back seat and one of the kids was waving something around in the back seat and was going to smack me in the face. And I just was like, attention, my face. And that was all I knew how to say.
My face.
But then it became a meme. It was great. Anyway, back to what you were saying about body language is really helpful in different cultures. Sorry about that tangent. I just really needed to yell at you about it.
Bonus content.
Yeah, thanks. I appreciate that. But
Constructive feedback. Change the game.
Yeah, but also those experiences, I think, where you're challenged, where you can't rely on what you would normally rely, and we rely heavily on language to be able to then figure out creatively, okay, how am I going to solve this problem? I think is a unique situation to be placed in, and that's often what you find when you travel, or even when you're listening to someone, is that you can be placed in a situation you're like, okay, I'm kind of uncomfortable. What am I going to do? And going back to the question, I think one of the other things I've found too is sometimes the best thing to do is just shut up and just not say anything. And sometimes that's really hard for me. I was an engineer before I was a minister, and engineering teaches you to be a problem solver. So everything you do is designed around how to stop a problem beginning or how to fix the problem when it does occur. And so that's part of the training.
Is that some insight into the duct tape in the travel?
That's right.
Engineer.
So I think part of me in conversation sometimes is I want to be solving the problem. I want to be trying to figure out, okay, what's the best answer? How do I guide this? But over the journey, I think I've learned that sometimes the best thing to do is just shut up, and that sometimes people, just in their ability to talk through it, will begin to either feel relaxed, they'll begin to start to find their own solution that they perhaps kind of knew was already there but had never really articulated it before. But just creating that space for that conversation, that authentic conversation, I think can be really beneficial for people. So
good lesson for people hosting podcasts, and also I think for people in marriages.
Two very oddly similar things. Anyway, I have one more question, and it's kind of born out of, I don't know if you've listened to many of our podcast episodes, but we had one of my friends, Bella Duncan, on the podcast an episode or 3 ago or something. And her problem for us was that she hates small talk, and she wants to avoid small talk and just get into the good stuff straight away with people. I'm feeling like you might be the perfect person to solve this problem for us. Like, do you like small talk, or do you skip it? And if you skip it, how do you do that?
Well, what do you think about that, Em?
What do I think about small talk, or what do I think that you think about small talk?
No, that was my response.
Oh,
so
no.
I think, yeah, all right.
Well,
so
nice
that's
job.
my way of answering the question. No, so I think part of it for me is asking the question. So small talk's okay, and in fact, I think you can learn from small talk about, the type of small talk, or if it's a little unusual or short, you can get a sense of where people are. But I often find even just asking a question, showing interest, is probably where I would start. Like I said, out at the pubs in Korea, when I'd sit down, there were some nights where I'd ask one question And I'd find myself sitting there an hour and a half later while this person had just gone because they just really needed to talk about something. And it was just purely because I asked a question that wasn't, oh, so how's your day been going? But it's like, oh, so how's life? How are you finding things? So just looking at those questions. And sometimes people will go, yeah, it's good, thanks. Why are you asking me, freak? But yeah, I think, like I said, taking an interest and taking an authentic interest and caring about people is probably one of the things that I'd encourage others to do, because you learn a lot from other people's journeys. And I think one of the things I've always said is the more I learn, the less I know. This idea of gathering knowledge helps me better understand why a certain person acts a certain way or reacts a certain way in different situations, and to know some of their journey and some of the things they're going through helps me be able to relate better to them and to figure out how we move forward in the world.
So do you have any particularly provocative questions? Because I'm trying to like relay this onto like, I don't know, a 20-year-old and a 20-year-old, because, you know, I feel like earlier in life there's a lot more insecurities and there's a lot less willingness to share maybe. So with that in mind, I mean, you've dealt with a lot of youth as well. What do you find, I guess, cracks that initial kind of shell around the small talk to get in there?
It's a really good question.
I don't know that there's a perfect answer either. I don't want to like put you on the spot, but and I guess maybe it's part of its intuition with different situations. I don't know, but
maybe. I think also it's a willingness to invest. Maybe that's the thing that comes to mind. You know, by investing your time, investing part of you to be able to say, okay, yeah, I'm going to choose to sacrifice thinking about that or going off to this other thing, and I'm going to choose to invest in this moment. I think people respond to that investment. And it's fascinating. One point in my journey, I was talking to someone and I obviously asked them a pretty hard-hitting question because they turned around and said, well, I don't want to tell you because you're paid to care.
Ooh.
And that stuck with me, I'll tell you. And I'm reasonably confident I did not have a decent answer back then, because I probably said something like, well, you know, I'd care regardless, which I did. But I think now what I'd say is that I think it's just part of who I am, and would care regardless of what my job was or what my role is. It's just I'm lucky enough to be able to devote all my time to something that I'm really passionate about, and that's who other people are and understanding their journey.
How do you balance that with, like, if you're exhausted and mentally drained and maybe you've been traveling for a month and you just kind of need some time for yourself, but you're still at the camp, or there is still opportunity for you to go that extra step and give that extra ministry? Like, do you balance that, and do you try to take time for yourself there, or do you kind of just go, I'll just give it all and I'll deal with myself later?
I'm an introvert, so that's interesting.
Yeah,
I'm
that's
very much an
always a
introvert.
surprise.
I was going to ask, like, for introverts, how can they still do all these things and be authentic, but also protect themselves and self-care, you know?
Yeah. It's a difficult question. So one of the things we've been doing in lockdown, we talked about that earlier, but there's been some nights where I've just said to Beck, I'm just going to watch a movie, because that is that me zoning out, that I don't have to focus on anything else. And so that's one of those things that really helps. Going out fishing, just being out on my own, going diving, because there's only about 5 different signals that you need to give to other people around you. Otherwise, you're just there by yourself. So doing those sorts of things re-energize me. But I think even when you're so exhausted, either physically or mentally or both, even those conversations I don't find draining. And so I think I wouldn't necessarily see it as, I just can't do one more. I would still see it as, this is another good opportunity to be able to share with someone. So
I have one more. I have like another question about just, I guess, how you approach what you do. And I've always noticed that you always tend to go the extra mile, like staying up at 2 a.m. laminating paper with sticky tape and things like that, and why that's important to you and why you tend to do that.
Yeah, I don't know. Maybe I'm just stupid.
Can I interrupt quickly? What's the laminating tape story? Because I feel like when I interpret Adam going the extra mile, it's not from a place of I do more work. It's from a place of I take that extra step to reach out to people.
I just remember that one time, I think we were playing some kind of, it was like a Stratego at Kalara or something.
Oh, yeah.
And like...
So you mean, when you say go the extra mile, you mean like to make it better for us kind of thing? What do you mean?
Yeah, like you were developing that experience for the youth at that camp, which I guess that was your job as well. You were just being paid to do it, no? No, but like, yeah, everything was cut out on pieces of paper already, so that would have worked fine. But instead, it was like we had to put like sticky tape all over the cards and stuff. So I don't know, so the cards lasted longer, or just so that they looked way better, like it was better. But it was just like...
It's just like, why are we doing this when the other would suffice? Yeah. Yeah, I don't know. One of the things I've always noticed is if you put more effort in, people come with a higher expectation. So, like, if you think about some of those large events and the effort and time that's put into them, people arrive with a higher expectation. And so if that then heightens their experience, I think that's probably why it's like, well, if I can make this really meaningful for someone, again, probably tapping into, because I don't know what their journey's been like and they might have had a miserable time. If this is going to be one of the highlights of their life, then who am I to go, look, you know what, that'll do. I'd rather say, well, look, if we can do it, let's try and do it. And even if it means an hour's extra sleep, well, is that really going to matter in the big scheme of things? Yeah, I don't know if that's subconsciously what I'm like, or whether it's the problem-solving thing where it's like you always try and look for a slightly better solution down the line.
I feel like problem-solving wise, functionally, that problem was solved. Like the cards were cut out and ready to go. Like it would have worked, but now it's got to also be laminated.
Yeah.
Is it perfectionist?
I want to say as well, I agree with it. Like I was more than happy to do it because I also like. I don't know if it's a value for quality. Like I really like things to be as good as they can be.
Yeah.
And I think it may just be purely that, not even that I want everyone to have a better experience, but just that this could be better, so I want it to be better.
Yeah. There's been a few stupid things like that I've done in my life.
All right.
Anyway, we're cracking on.
Yeah. Shall we move on to your problem for us?
So one of the things I've been thinking about is when Sam and I were leaders at an event over in the US, every morning we were the designated coffee gophers. So we started off going and getting coffee for the two of us and one of the other podcast people that have been on your show, Ben Smith.
Yep.
In the next few days, people soon discovered that we were doing this every morning and decided to jump on board. And so I think by day 3, we were getting 10 coffees to bring back to the event for the French translator, someone from Hawaii, a participant, which happened to be young Emily Judd.
I'm not sorry. I was not a leader on that camp and I was not allowed to have that coffee, but it was the best part of my entire life.
Yeah. So anyway, as we were going to the coffee shop at the same time every day, we were able to put in our order with the lady behind the counter in this little tiny town where we were. And we got to the point where Sam and I would walk in every day and she would be making the last cup of coffee to give to us, would give her the cash and walk out. On, I think it was the second to last day, Sam and I went through our usual routine. We walked in and she said to us, now, Adam, your coffee's on the left and Sam, yours on the right. And we went, why? She's like, because you guys always walk into the shop the same way every day.
Yeah.
And we kind of went, what? And we didn't realise, but every day I would drive, Sam would sit there, we'd get out of the car, whoever it was would open the door and then we would both approach the counter walking the same way. In fact, we knew this because the next day we went to walk to the car and we did also the same thing we did every day. And that was, we were like, I need to go on the other side, and we'd have to cross over paths to get to the opposite side of the car because we were typically going. So the problem is there some sort of subconscious arrangement that you have with your friends or your family when you're walking down the street that you will choose a particular side to walk on every time? And we never think about it, but subconsciously we both know that is the side that you walk on.
Do you remember what side it was that I was on? Because I just remembered that I think I did this with someone else as well.
I'm reasonably confident that you were on my right side.
Yeah, okay. I'm on the right with my mum as well. Like we've done laps
that
around
makes
the
me
block
feel
or whatever.
great. Thanks.
Why is that bad though? I don't know, but I just feel like I'm on the right all the time.
You're on my right now.
Yeah. Uh-huh.
But that's just because that's the way our chairs are set up.
It's a coincidence.
But have you guys subconsciously set up that way because that's how you
maybe
feel more
that's
comfortable?
why we always, whenever we take a photo together, we're always on not our good sides because we are always in the exact same formation, and the formation is not either of our good sides. And if we just swap sides, both of our good sides would be on display.
Yeah. I don't know. I definitely think there's some merit to this theory.
Well, also, my dogs cannot walk if they're not in the exact same formation. Scooby is on the left and Lily is on the right. And even when I walk with Mum, we take a dog each. And if I often will take Lily. If I'm walking, basically we have to change our sides and walk around so that the dogs can be in that exact formation because they don't walk well unless they're in that exact formation, and they will tangle themselves to get in that formation.
So now for the next week, you'll be thinking about walking next to someone. It's like, do I always walk this side? And you can try. You could switch to the other side and see if it feels right or if it feels weird.
I'm just trying to think about doing that now with like going on a walk at night with Mum around the block. And I did it with Jackie as well. I don't think I would feel comfortable at all walking on the left. I think it would.
That just made me think. I remember as a kid when I would walk Locke home from school, I would make the conscious effort that I would always stand on the road side and he would also always be on the curb because we were walking home quite young and I was a paranoid old sister and I always wanted him to be further away from the road. So I would always walk like that. But now I'm just thinking of like the last time that I walked with Will, I think I'm always further away from the road, and maybe there's like a dynamic of like safety involved in which side I choose to walk on people. Well, also, I wonder if I don't walk next to Lachlan very often, but I wonder if now that Lachlan's 6 foot tall and boxes every day, whether that has changed, whether I would walk roadside or on the other side.
It's an interesting conundrum.
Yeah.
What do you think of it?
It makes me wonder whether or not there is this natural thing, but is it subconscious and is it because of a protection thing, or is it just because that's what feels more natural for whatever reason? Because, yeah, I don't know. If if it's your partner and you would normally hold hands with them, it feels more comfortable to always hold their left hand. So then naturally you just start walking on that right side of them so that then you can hold their left hand. I don't know.
Do you think it could, I don't know if it could be like not a dominance thing, but like this person is like my elder, or like a respect thing, or like I have them on my left or my right, or
I want someone to do a study.
I'd be interested to
find out. Sounds like
there's
a PhD in this.
Yeah. Imagine explaining that to your friends and family about.
There's got to be some kind of relationship involved in it.
Yeah, it's really interesting to me because definitely there's got to be merit to that.
Well, even on the level of Adam would always drive the car and therefore he would stay on. I'm imagining, I forget which way cars work, and then I have to flip it and it's confusing. But I'm imagining Adam would get out of the car, you would be on the side, like the passenger side, you would open the door and then you would go back to the passenger side of him. So even on that level, there is a little bit of relationship in there because he would always drive you and therefore you would stay on that side.
But the weird thing was we'd often meet out the front of this building and then walk 50 metres to the car.
Yeah.
And every single time we always chose to walk on that same side because we always ended up going, oh, that's right, I have to go on the other side of the car, and we'd switch over paths.
Mm-hmm.
Again, though, you're doing the thing that I just said, but you're doing the Australian version. Like you're doing the Adam is going to drive, I'm going to be in this side, so I'm going to stand on this side of him. But then your brains just didn't compute in the week that relationship had to just swap sides, if you know what I mean. Like you were still doing it, but you were doing it for an Australian car. Whew, interesting stuff.
Yeah. Anyway.
Yeah.
We need to quickly do recommendations and then you can just piss off, please.
Yeah. So you guys can go to bed because you got to work and all that kind of crap tomorrow. That's fine.
Yeah. Okay. Recommendations. I have a great one and I'm going to go first. So I recently discovered there are playlists, and I can't choose a specific one, but on Spotify, people make playlists for specific Hogwarts houses, right? So I have become obsessed with listening to, there's three types of 2 different houses that I really like. So there's, I like the Gryffindor and the Hufflepuff ones, but I only have a few of them. So one that I like is called Gryffindor Common Room circa 1975. It's amazing. There's another one that's just Gryffindor. Then there's Gryffindor but make it Gen Z. And then there's the exact same but for Hufflepuff. So there's Hufflepuff Common Room circa 1995, Hufflepuff and Hufflepuff but make it Gen Z. And they're just like, I just can't explain it. Like I put the Gryffindor Common Room but circa whatever on while I was like studying, and it was just like, I just pretended I was in the Gryffindor Common Room. It was the best thing ever. And it's been really a highlight of my week. And that's my recommendation.
Were you sorted into Gryffindor?
Yes, I'm Gryffindor. I'm like Griffin Puff, which is why I kind of went for Hufflepuff as my second music choice. But yes, I'm Gryffindor.
What are you, Ads? Have you been sorted? I'm sure you have.
I'm Ravenclaw.
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
That makes sense with all that wanting to know things about people. Well, you're a Gryffindor, aren't you?
Yeah.
Yeah. But yeah, that's on Spotify, and go and find your Hogwarts house and listen to the music because it's super good. Anyone else have a recommendation?
Ads, do you have one? I'm still stewing.
So my recommendation is if you're going to do any sort of travel, while expensive, the most important thing that I travel with that I would, if I had to start from scratch and go, okay, build up your travel kit from ground zero, the first thing I would get is noise cancelling headphones, and decent ones. Don't skimp. This is not a promo for Bose, but my Bose noise cancelling headphones.
Do you have the QC700s?
No, I think I still have like the QC15.
Wow.
Old school.
Yeah.
Yeah. But they work. And I can say the difference in how you arrive is
Remarkable.
chalk and cheese. It's remarkable. It just, you don't have the constant humming and the background noise. Absolutely. If you're going to do any form of travel, I would highly recommend them.
Great. That's a good recommendation.
You're wearing my QC35s right now.
And I can't hear anything.
There's a podcast, honestly, any podcast with Tristan Harris, but we've already recommended The Social Dilemma, right? Or haven't we?
Don't remember.
Anyway, Tristan Harris was recently on the Joe Rogan podcast, and it is a great listen. Tristan Harris is the leader of the I couldn't tell you off the top of my head what the name of the organization was, but he was a design ethicist at Google. And so he was one of the first people to really think on the fact that the design decisions that they were making was affecting billions of people. And so, keeping people engaged and hooked was kind of the main focus, and being ethical around that. And so he's now got an organization dedicated to like awareness of that. And the documentary is doing crazy numbers on Netflix at the moment. But it's really relevant to our discussion about social media earlier.
So are you recommending the podcast episode or The Social Dilemma?
Whichever you'd prefer. I think it's definitely worth watching. Either watch The Social Dilemma on Netflix, and if that's not your vibe, you can listen to a really nice, authentic conversation, even if you just search Tristan Harris. But there was a recent episode on the Joe Rogan podcast, which is quite long, but
we'll have it linked.
Yeah. Yeah, they're great conversations and great topics to learn about.
Nice. Thank you so much for being on our episode today. We were holding off on this episode because we knew it was going to be a good one and was going to be a big one, and it was. It was everything we thought it would be. So thank you so much for chatting to us, and
yeah, really appreciate your authenticity and your willingness to stay on with us for a few hours. I could always talk to you for days on end, honestly.
Yeah, I feel like I want to hang up and A, go to bed, but then B, stay and just chat.
No, thanks, guys. I appreciate that, and I appreciate you guys and all that you do. Yeah, it's tough. I mean, I wish we could catch up more often than in Canada or Tahiti.
But that's also nice.
Yeah.
Yeah, you're right.
I look forward to seeing you on a layover in some exotic airport, maybe in a few years.
Thanks for having me, guys. It really was a pleasure to just be able to sit down and have a chat with you.
Yeah. Thank you so much for listening to today's episode. We hope you enjoyed it. If you did, you can subscribe, leave us a review, follow us on Instagram, show us where you're listening by posting and tagging us on Instagram. We also have a Patreon account, and you can subscribe there and support us if you'd like.
Also, the music is by The Vinyl Press, and you can find them on Instagram at The Vinyl Press.
Yeah, and send us any problems that you have. We want to solve them for you.
Woo!